So the first question this week was, what are the key differences between SCP, Situational Crime Prevention, and the social prevention approach examined last week? So first off, let's have a talk about what this question is trying to get at. Now, this question is helping us think about the important differences between the two prevention approaches that we've looked at most recently. Now, understanding the differences between two things can also help us understand each separate thing a little bit better. So, the point of this question isn't just to say, oh, you know the definition of A and you also know the definition of B. It's about using these distinctions between the two to better understand what each prevention technique or approach is actually all about. So, when you are thinking about answering this question, I've just got up here on the slide a few examples of the sorts of things you would take into consideration when answering this question. If we look back at social prevention, really what that seems to be about when compared to situational crime prevention, or SCP, is that social prevention is more about addressing the criminogenic effects of social structure, right? So when I say social structure, we're talking about how people are organized into groups and communities, and we're thinking about socioeconomic status and those sorts of things. Social prevention tries to reduce the impact of these criminogenic effects by addressing inequality and developmental issues. So you may recall that there were attempts to improve young people's decision-making abilities and also their socialization. That is, how they become incorporated into the broader society around them and how they interact with other people and develop relationships and so on. On the other hand, situational prevention is more concerned with the immediate circumstances through which a criminal event occurs. And in this concern, it's focused on shaping the risk and reward ratio. Remember, the rational actor kind of theory underpinning this stuff. It's making the risk of crime not worth the possible payoff that they might get from committing it. So then you have things like target gardening and capable guardianship. Anyway, those were just a few suggestions. The next question is, how is the individual motivated offender addressed differently in these two prevention approaches? Now, it helps to think back to Felson's crime triangle. Remember, the motivated offender was 1 point, the target or victim was the 2nd point, and the capable guardianship or lack thereof was the 3rd point. So these two different prevention approaches address the motivated offender in different ways. Understanding this different approach can help you understand better what social and situational prevention is trying to get at. So again, I've just got some suggested dot points under the two. You recall that social prevention is assuming, or takes the position that the criminal capacities of individuals are shaped by inequality and their social environment. So in a simpler way of putting this is that the possibility that someone may commit criminal acts and that sort of part of their character is influenced a lot by their upbringing in marginalized circumstances. So therefore, social prevention, based on this assumption, tries to modify the behavior of the motivated offender. It's trying to reshape that person in a way. But more specifically, it's not trying to reshape an existing motivated offender, it's trying to prevent them from actually existing in the first place. So it seeks to address social disadvantages so that people are less likely to become motivated offenders, so that corner of the triangle, the motivated offender in the Felson's triangle, just doesn't exist anymore, right? Now, as for situational crime prevention, it doesn't sort of see as its business changing the character of the motivated offender. It doesn't really try to intervene at that fundamental level. Instead, it assumes that this offender is rational and utility maximizing. They're trying to get the best risk-reward ratio so that the reward is worth much more than the risk, if that makes sense. So situational prevention tries to modify situations, right? So that these situations or circumstances are less desirable to motivated offenders, right? So they're trying to change a situation so that the effort and the risk of committing the crime just is not worth whatever they're going to get out of it. Now, this next question is asking that we move beyond like an either-or distinction, right? We're moving beyond saying, oh, social prevention is the best, situational prevention is the best, and instead thinking of situations where one form might be more appropriate than the other, yeah? So this is getting us thinking a bit about how, crime isn't just this one singular thing. There are different types of crime. There are different, ethical and moral levels and dimensions behind crime. Some crimes are so-called victimless, and other crimes are profoundly inhuman and that sort of thing. So we're trying to think a bit more broadly than, we just got to find the one correct technique and go with that. It's about knowing which thing applies in which situation, right? Respecting the circumstance and the specificity of what we're actually trying to deal with. So these are actually more just even vague suggestions, because I'm hoping that you students out there will have a bit of a think about this one. Some of the sort of gentle guidance that I can give is that with social prevention, perhaps it's better at addressing long-term crime trends. And maybe it helps to address these intertwined issues relating to inequality, marginalization, and social exclusion, as well as crime prevention. So it has numerous benefits outside of just crime prevention, perhaps. And, you might start thinking about, social exclusion, that's a different problem to crime, maybe. But one perspective you could take is that in addressing social exclusion, this might help to develop other useful resources for crime prevention. And if you've done some of the other criminology units, some of these terms may be familiar, such as, developing social capital, developing and improving informal social control, social cohesion, and that sort of thing. I'm just throwing that out there as an idea or a suggestion. I'm not telling you that this is the correct answer. I want you to think a bit broadly. With situational crime prevention, clearly it's probably more suited to opportunistic crimes, and it may be more suited to the immediate shorter-term needs of crime prevention. And so, maybe there's a public event happening and we can do things to prevent crime by having security and that sort of thing, right? So maybe a really shorthand, and this is really rough and I wouldn't call it an ironclad law, but social prevention is more of a big picture view, and situational crime prevention is a more on the ground, immediate focus. So maybe that can help you think about the differences between the two and understand each one a little bit better.